Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 1988 fantasy adventure Willow, which is beloved of many a nerd of a certain generation. And the film begins when the evil sorceress Queen Bavmorda hears of a prophecy that a child with a special rune birthmark will bring around her downfall. So she imprisons all the pregnant women in her realm. That way, as soon as the child is born, she can have it killed. Bavmorda is an evil sorceress indeed. Of course, the plan goes awry, or there wouldn't be much of a movie. When the rune-marked child is born, the midwife manages to smuggle it out of the castle and set it adrift on a river before the queen's minions can catch up with her. The baby drifts downriver into the bucolic land of the small-statured Nelwyn people, where it is found by the children of a farmer and want-to-be sorcerer named Willow Ufgood, who is obviously our main character. It soon becomes clear that malevolent forces are after the child, so the village leader orders Willow to take the baby away and give it to some tall people, i.e. humans, to raise. Now, the first tall person that Willow meets is a warrior named Madmartigan, who has been locked up in a crow's cage. Madmartigan expresses great willingness to look after the child if Willow will just free him first, though Willow quite sensibly is reluctant to trust the human's word. Various shenanigans ensue thereafter that force Willow and Madmartigan to team up with a pair of irascible brownies in order to try and protect the baby, whose name, they learn, is Elora, from Bavmorda and her forces. Chief among those forces being Sorsha, Bavmorda's fierce warrior daughter. Can one frankly rather inept would-be wizard, a couple of squabbling brownies, and a dissolute rascal of a swordsman really protect Elora from the might of the world's greatest sorceress and her powerful army? Well, yeah, I probably already know the answer to that question, so the better one would be, will it be fun watching them do it? Now, by the late 1980s, the financial failure of fantasy films like Krull, Dragon Slayer, and Legend had so soured Hollywood on the genre that even a big name like George Lucas struggled to find financing for such projects, though admittedly, Lucas had probably done himself no favours with the financial calamity that was 1986's Howard the Duck. But the combination of Lucas with director Ron Howard, who was fresh off the success of Splash and Cocoon, was enough to open studio minds, and more importantly, studio checkbooks, to the potential for taking another stab at the big-budget fantasy film. And then Willow came out to mixed reviews from critics and mediocre financial outcomes. While the movie did eventually limp to a small profit off the back of the international box office and strong home video and TV performance, it was far from the blockbuster that some had anticipated. High fantasy would have to wait until the start of the next millennium to finally enjoy its first unequivocal blockbusters, first with the movies about that wizard boy, and then later with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. And you should keep those latter three movies in mind, for reasons we will discuss shortly. Before we do, though, I think I should make something clear. In 1988, I was the absolute target audience for a movie like this. My favourite books were all fantasy novels. I was, and still am, a D&D player. I'd seen and enjoyed those earlier 80s fantasy epics, Krull and Dragon Slayer and Legend. I'd sit through just about any old direct-to-video Drek, as long as it was a fantasy film. The Sword and the Sorcerer, Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, Amazons, I watched them all. So the fact that I walked out of the cinema after Willow thinking, well, that was pretty mediocre, was not a good sign for the movie's qualities, and rewatching it now, older and I hope wiser, I'm forced to say, this is a bad movie. Let's talk about why I say that. And first, let's start with the fact that the plot is just a patchwork of bits from pre-existing stories that have been clumsily stitched together. The prophesied child, Queen Bavmorda's draconian reaction, and the baby drifting down the river to safety are all straight out of the Old Testament, of course. George Lucas, who wrote the original story from which the script was developed, has just smashed together Herod's attempt to kill the baby Jesus with the rescue of baby Moses from the Nile. Then Lucas lurches into pure Tolkien pastiche, just with the runes filed off. We got a MacGuffin that can bring about the downfall of the evil tyrant, and said MacGuffin circumstantially ends up in the hands of a not-hobbit from the Not-Shire. The entirety of Lucas's innovations, the MacGuffin is a baby, and the evil tyrant is a woman. But why stop there with recycling old plots? In fact, why not just recycle your own old stuff? So as soon as Willow, sets off to find a human guardian for the baby, he meets Madmartigan, who is, and stop me if you've heard this before, a scoundrel with a heart of gold who will have a romance with a princess. Now, just in case the recycled Starwisms weren't already frequent enough, and we can also draw, a parallel between wannabe wizard and wannabe Jedi here, Lucas also wedged in a pair of bickering brownies as transparent droid XPs. Much more annoying, unpleasant droid XPs, but they're clearly rehashed, reheated, teeny tiny versions of C3PO and R2-D2. Now, I have often said that execution trumps originality, so I have to concede this is just a bunch of stuff we've seen before mashed together. It doesn't automatically make for a bad film. But never fear, Willow has way more problems than just this. Because the script also has some other serious flaws, of which time management is a big one, and I mean that in a couple of different ways. First, the overall pacing is a mess. For instance, after the opening text scroll, because of course there's an opening text scroll, this is a George Lucas movie, we get the whole baby rescue section, which is honestly entirely unnecessary, and if anything, serves mostly to remove tension and mystery from the situation. We could have started with the baby being found by Willow's kids and actually have some interesting questions to unravel as the film continued. Who is this child? Why were they drifting down the river? Why are evil monsters after them? Instead, we've been fully info-dumped and can now just settle into the interminably long period of the film before the real quest, Willow learning magic so he can protect Alora from Bavmorda, can begin. How will it begin? Well, with a big old info dump, of course. This is a movie that loves to first explain what's going to happen next before it actually shows it happening. The result is a very stop-start narrative that feels quite repetitive. Because it is repetitive, it's literally repeating itself. We're seeing everything twice. Now Willow must seek out the good sorceress Fin Raviel, the exposition tells us, before Willow dutifully trudges off to find the good sorceress in question. This happens over and over. Time management is also a problem on a more granular level. Like a lot of films, Willow sometimes attempts to generate tension by having simultaneous events occurring and switching back and forth between them. Think of the hero hunts for the bad guy while the bad guy counts down to something evil routine. The problem here is that time is so blatantly moving at different speeds in these supposedly simultaneous events that it jarred me out of the film. It's like when the hero spent 2 minutes defusing a bomb that's on a 10-second countdown. But the problems don't stop there. The tone of the movie is as wildly inconsistent as the timing. This is a film that can't seem to make up its mind whether the characters are in any real peril from one scene to the next. Queen Bavmorda's all about murdering this baby, except that she has Alora in her clutches for an extended period of time and doesn't, just stick a knife in the kid or something. She is, in fact, a very PG-friendly bad guy indeed, almost entirely using non-lethal methods to subdue her opponents. I mean, I'm not saying that turning people into pigs and possums is nice behaviour, but it's very conspicuously fixable, which killing them presumably is not, and it undermines the movie's occasional attempts to present a situation as genuinely threatening. Willow's brownie allies, meanwhile, are crude comic relief characters of the worst kind, 3 parts poop jokes to 1 part racist caricature. If you're ever wondering where the heck Jar Jar Binks came from, this movie is the answer. And then we have the romance subplot, which is quite literally kicked off by having one of the brownies accidentally give Madmartigan a magical roofie. Off his face on love dust, Madmartigan professes his passion for Bavmorda's daughter Sorsha, and then he takes her hostage. Sorsha subsequently escapes and rejoins her mother's forces, and then abruptly just decides she's in love with Madmartigan and joins the good guys. That's it. That's literally the whole romance. Roofie, declaration, kidnap, escape, kissy faces. I mean, I love a well-done bad guy turns good story arc, but this is the complete opposite of well done. It's just there. So yeah, sorry fellow nerds. As much as I want to like Willow, it's a bad film. Next time, film critic Michael Medved ascribed the title of Worst Director onto the unfortunate head of Edward Davis Wood Jr., better known to cinema history as Ed Wood. From which I can only surmise that Mr. Medved had never had the misfortune to see the work of Coleman Chambers Francis. But I have, and I must share the pain, so I'll be talking about Francis's 1961 travesty, The Beast of Yucca Flats. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've seen Willow, look, feel free to tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm not. It's a bad movie. Sorry.